This is going to be a very, very weird video, so I hope everyone plays along and enjoys it. In our world, the sands of time, much like this lava lamp in front of me, are constantly changing. One minute you think you have the answer, the next minute everything is changing, forming differently, and you form different opinions. Things aren't the same as they used to be, and it's an ever-evolving process. However, unlike the rest of the world, one thing doesn't change, and that's the truth. I have two wine glasses in front of me. The one on the right is filled with liquid, and it says truth on it. I also have two quarters that symbolize the truth. I have a wine glass on the left that says confirmation bias. I'm going to place 1/4 in each of these glasses. Now, if you notice, you can see the quarter that symbolizes the truth still in the empty confirmation bias glass. And on the right, you see the one that's filled up with liquid. You can't see the quarter that symbolizes the truth because it's covered. And why does this matter, you ask? Well, I'm about to illustrate why. Because one second you think you know everything, and the next second you don't. And this Delphi case is no different than that. So, you have people who have confirmation bias. And what is confirmation bias? It's when you have a theory or an idea, or you think you know something, and instead of seeking the truth, you keep pushing forward and pushing your narrative because you want to be right. You don't want to be wrong. And so you put blinders on as to what the actual truth is in order to prove your hypothesis or your theory. Let me give you an example. Well, there's people out there who say, well, Mike Patty committed this crime. He looks like Bridge Guy. Well, I'm sorry, everybody, but that's confirmation bias because he was on tape at work during the time of the murders. So we'll pour a little bit of the truth in there and the confirmation bias glass. Oh, what's that? There's people who said Kelsey German laughed in interviews? Boy, that must make her guilty. Well, that's confirmation bias also. So let's pour a little bit more of the truth in the glass on the left. What's that you say? The defense team filed paperwork and it said Odinites were responsible for the crimes? Huh. And they didn't provide evidence even though they named names and potentially destroyed the lives of other people? There's a little bit of confirmation bias in the left glass there. That's strange. All of a sudden it's becoming harder and harder to see the truth over in the confirmation bias glass that was once empty. Oh, wait a minute. What's that? The FBI filed an affidavit for a search warrant against Ron Logan? And they stated that... What's that? They stated that typically when somebody comes up with an alibi for a crime or asks somebody else to provide an alibi for them, that typically means that that person's guilty. Even though in this case, the reason that he provided that alibi may have just been because he was trying to avoid going to jail for a parole violation because he drove his car that day. What do you know? Let's pour a little bit more truth in the confirmation bias glass. Oh, what do you know? People think that Tobe Lesenby looks like the Sketch. Well, Sketch number 1 anyway. Let's pour a little bit more truth in the confirmation bias glass. What's that? The defense team says Richard Allen's being abused? Must be those Odinites again. Here's a little bit more liquid in the confirmation bias glass. All of a sudden, there's more liquid in the confirmation bias glass covering up the truth than there is in the actual truth side. Speaking of that truth side, let's go over there, shall we? Oh, what's that you say? They found an unspent round that matches, allegedly, Richard Allen's weapon? Huh. Well, let's pour a little bit out of this truth glass because we're digging through all of the non-truth. What's that? Richard Allen admits to being on the bridge that day? on February 13th between 1:30 and 3:30 p.m. Let's pour a little bit of liquid out of this truth glass here because we're sifting through all the BS to get to the truth. You say he parked at the CPS building and admitted to wearing the same or similar clothing that day? Let's pour a little bit more into this glass. Huh. What do you know? There were a limited number of males that were seen at the scene that day. And also, Richard Allen admitted that no one else used his weapon but him in his household? Let's pour a little bit more of that liquid out of here. Oh, I've got another one. He actually owns a .40 caliber weapon too. And on top of that, what do you know? They searched his house, his car, his property, and got a warrant, and a judge thought there was enough probable cause to send him to trial. Now, even though this glass is almost empty, and there's still a little bit of reasonable doubt perhaps in there, suddenly you can see clear as day the truth, that quarter on the right hand side, because we dug through and poured out all the nonsense. Now, I'm guilty of confirmation bias at times too, but I want to remind everyone that every single video I do on my page, I've never once stated that Richard Allen is guilty of this crime. And in fact, people in the United States are innocent until proven guilty in the court of law. And my silly demonstration here certainly doesn't convict Allen. But I want to remind you, I'm not the judge. I'm not the jury. A jury of 12 of his peers will decide that. But at the same time, we're allowed to speculate based on known facts in this case. And if you ever want to get to the truth, that's what you need to do. You need to stick with the things that we know to be factual and try to avoid confirmation bias and try to avoid just wanting to be right all the time. And having said that, I hope everybody understands the concept of this video. One thing remains. The truth, like this quarter, is solid. It doesn't change. What does change are people's opinions, people's thoughts on things. But again, how can you possibly see the truth when you have so much confirmation bias that it clouds the entire glass? All I've ever cared about in this case is justice for Abby and Libby and their family members. And when I continue to make videos going forward, that's not going to change. Have a great day, everybody. And please, seek the truth, not your own confirmation bias.